I want to tell you about the moment I realized I had been postponing my own life. I was 72 years old. It was a Wednesday afternoon in late September. I was sitting on my back porch in Savannah, Georgia, watching the sun go down over the neighbors' oak trees. Beautiful evening. Cool breeze. Perfect Georgia fall weather. And I realized, sitting there in that quiet, that I had spent the last 7 years waiting until my knee felt better to take that trip to the Grand Canyon. I had been talking about since 1987, waiting until I lose a little more weight to sign up for the painting class at the community center, waiting until my energy came back to call my old college roommate Richard, whom I had not spoken to in 4 years, waiting until things felt more settled to finally start living the retirement. I had worked 40 years for 7 years, gone, and the thought that hit me like ice water was this: what exactly was I waiting for? What was the condition that had to be met before I permitted myself to actually live? There was no condition. There was no finish line I was waiting to cross. I was simply waiting, out of habit, out of fear I had never stopped to examine, out of a quiet belief I had never consciously chosen but somehow carried for years, the belief that living fully was something that happened to other people, younger people, healthier people, people whose circumstances were somehow more ready than mine. That evening on my porch in Savannah changed everything. Today I want to share what I discovered on the other side of that moment. Because if you were anywhere between 60 and 90 right now, and you have been quietly postponing pieces of your own life, this conversation is specifically for you, and I promise you, by the end of this video, you will have something concrete and real to do today. Not next month. Not when things settle down. Today, first. I want to talk about something that nobody in the senior health space talks about honestly enough. Fear of aging is not one fear. It is actually a collection of smaller fears all bundled together. And until you separate them and look at each one clearly, they control you without you even realizing it. My friend Dorothy is 74. She lives in Clearwater, Florida. She is sharp, funny, and one of the most capable people I have ever met. But for 3 years after her retirement, Dorothy did not leave Clearwater. Not once. No visits to her daughter in Nashville. No weekend trip to St. Augustine she had always wanted. Nothing. When I finally asked her why, she said something that has stayed with me ever since. She said, "I keep thinking something might happen while I am away, and I won't be close to my doctor. And what if I fall? And what if I need something and I am too far from home?" I said, "Dorothy, something might happen while you are sitting on your couch, too." She was quiet for a long time. Then she laughed. Then she cried a little. And then she said, "I think I have been treating safety as the same thing as living, and they are not the same thing at all." Dorothy went to Nashville 2 months later. Then St. Augustine. Last year, she took an Amtrak train all the way to see her grandchildren in Portland, Oregon. She is 74 years old, and she told me it was the best thing she has ever done. The fears did not disappear before she went. She went while the fears were still there. And that is the entire secret I want to share with you today. Fearless aging is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to live fully in the presence of fear, to feel it, acknowledge it, and then do the thing anyway. So what are the specific fears that steal the most life from people over 65? Because I want to name them clearly. I want to bring them into the light where you can actually look at them. Fear number 1 is the fear of physical limitation. This is the belief that your body can no longer support the life you want, that your knees, your hips, your heart, your energy, your balance are all too compromised to attempt anything meaningful or exciting or new. And here is the truth about this fear. Sometimes it is partially valid. Our bodies do change after 65. There are real limitations that deserve real respect. I am not going to sit here and tell you to ignore your health or push past genuine medical warnings. But most of the time, this fear has grown far larger than the actual limitation. Most of the time, people are limiting their entire lives based on a body that could handle significantly more than they are giving it credit for. Research from the Stanford Center on Longevity consistently shows that older adults dramatically underestimate their own physical capabilities. We restrict ourselves based on what we think our bodies can do rather than what they actually can do when allowed to try. My neighbor Harold, who is 78 and lives in the house next to mine, has 2 replaced knees and a pacemaker. He went kayaking for the first time in his life last summer on a lake in Tennessee, with his cardiologist's blessing, a life jacket, and a guided tour company that specializes in seniors. He spent 3 hours on that water and came home looking 10 years younger. Harold did not wait for a body that felt like it was 50. He worked with the body he actually has, and his body, the one with 2 artificial knees and a pacemaker, was capable of something genuinely beautiful. Talk to your doctor before attempting anything new physically. Get the specific guidance you need for your health situation. And then, within those guidelines, push the boundary of what you believe is possible. You may be genuinely shocked by what you discover. Fear number 2 is the fear of looking foolish. This one runs deep in our generation. We were raised in a time when adults were expected to act their age, when there were things that were appropriate for people of a certain age, and things that simply were not. Starting something new at 70 felt embarrassing. Going back to school at 68 felt ridiculous. Trying something you have never done before at 75, something that requires you to be a beginner, felt undignified. I felt this fear intensely when I signed up for the painting class at my community center at 72. I walked in that first Tuesday morning, convinced I would be the only person my age there, convinced I would be terrible, convinced people would look at me and wonder what on earth I was doing there. There were 11 people in that class. The youngest was 58. The oldest was 81. Every single one of us was a beginner. Every single one of us made paintings that first day that looked like something a determined 5-year-old might produce, and we laughed. We laughed sulfur monoxide hard at our terrible paintings, and in that laughter was something I had not felt in years. The specific freedom of not knowing what you were doing and not caring. The freedom of being a beginner again. Being a beginner is not embarrassing. Being a beginner is brave. It means you chose growth over comfort. It means you chose life over the appearance of having it all figured out. What have you been avoiding because you were afraid of looking foolish? Because I am telling you right now, that thing is probably the exact thing you most need to do. Let me ask you something that I want you to sit with for a moment. If you were not afraid, if fear was simply not a factor, what would you do this week? Not this year. Not this decade. This week, hold that answer in your mind. We are going to come back to it. Fear number 3 is the fear of time running out. This is the most painful one, and it is the one that most people never say out loud. After 65, you become aware of time in a way you simply were not before. You do the math. You think about your parents, how old they were when they passed, and you do the calculation. You start to feel like the runway is shortening, and that awareness can do one of two opposite things. It can paralyze you, or it can liberate you. Most people let it paralyze them. The awareness of limited time becomes a reason to play it safe, to stay close to home, to stop attempting new things. Because what is the point of starting something you might not finish? But the people who age fearlessly, the ones who are genuinely alive at 80 and 85, and yes, even 92, have found a way to let the awareness of limited time work in the opposite direction. They think I have less time than I once did, which means I cannot afford to waste another single Tuesday, sitting on this porch waiting for life to feel more ready. Eleanor Roosevelt, who lived to 78 and remained one of the most active and impactful people of her generation until near the end of her life, said something that I have carried with me since I first read it. She said, "You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you really stop to look fear in the face." She was right. I have lived that truth, and I want you to live it too. The time you have is not a reason to stop. It is the most powerful reason to start. Now, let me give you something practical, because I promised you action steps, and I mean it. Here is what I call the fearless aging practice. It is 5 simple commitments, not resolutions, not goals, commitments. Things you do consistently regardless of how you feel on any given day. Commitment 1. Do one new thing every single month. Not something dramatic. Not something that requires preparation or planning for 6 months. Just one new thing. A restaurant you have never tried. A road you have never driven down. A class you have always been curious about. A book from a genre you have never read. Newness is neurologically valuable. Research from the University of Southern California shows that novel experiences stimulate the production of dopamine and promote new neural connections in the aging brain. Every new experience, however small, is literally good for your brain. One new thing. Every month. That is 12 new experiences a year. That is 60 new experiences in 5 years. Commitment 2. Call one person you have been meaning to call, not text. Call every single week. Someone you miss. Someone you have been thinking about. Someone you had a falling out with and have been too proud to reach out to first. The research on social connection and longevity is overwhelming, and I have talked about it in previous videos. But beyond the research, I want to say this plainly. You know who you have been meaning to call. You have known for months or maybe years, and every week that goes by without making that call is a week of connection you will never get back. Make the call this week. Make it before this video is even finished if you need to. Commitment 3. Move your body outdoors at least 3 times every week. Not in a gym. Not on a treadmill. Outside. Sunlight. Fresh air. The actual world around you. There is research from the University of Michigan showing that spending time in natural outdoor environments reduces cortisol, improves mood, lowers blood pressure, and increases feelings of vitality and energy in adults over 60. The effect is measurable, significant, and completely free. A 20-minute walk in your neighborhood counts. Sitting on a park bench, watching ducks on a pond counts. Gardening in your backyard counts. Just get outside and let the world remind you that it is still beautiful and you are still in it. Commitment 4. Identify one dream you put on hold and take one concrete step toward it this week. Not the whole dream. Just one step. One phone call. one Google search, one conversation with someone who has done what you want to do. The Grand Canyon trip I mentioned at the beginning of this video. I took it at 73. I have a replaced hip and moderate arthritis in my right knee. I did not hike the canyon. I stood at the rim as the sun came up, and I watched the light change the color of those rocks from gray to pink to gold. It was the most beautiful thing I have seen in my entire life. And I almost missed it because I kept waiting until I felt more ready. What is your Grand Canyon? What is the thing you have been saying you will do someday? Someday is not a day of the week. Pick a real day. Take one step toward it before the sun goes down today. Commitment 5. Change the story you tell yourself about who you are at this age. This is the most important one, and it is the most overlooked. The internal story you carry about aging, about what is possible for you, about what people your age do and do not do. That story is shaping your biology right now. Dr. Becca Levy at Yale, whose research I have mentioned before on this channel, found that people who hold positive views about their own aging live an average of 7.5 years, longer than those who hold negative views, 7.5 years. From a story, from the way you talk to yourself about yourself. What story are you telling? Are you telling yourself you were too old, too slow, too tired, too late? Or are you telling yourself that you are experienced, capable, still growing, still surprising yourself, still here for reasons that matter? Choose the second story, not because it is always easy to believe, but because it is more true, and because your body is listening to every word. I am 75 years old now. I paint badly and joyfully every Tuesday morning. I have been to the Grand Canyon, the Florida Keys, and a small town in Vermont I had never heard of before that turned out to be one of the most beautiful places I have ever seen. I still have fears. My knees still hurt some mornings. My energy is not what it was at 50. There are hard days and slow days and days when getting off the couch feels like enough of an accomplishment. But I am no longer waiting. I stopped waiting on that porch in Savannah 3 years ago, and the years since then have been the richest, fullest, most genuinely alive years of my entire life. Not because my circumstances changed, because my decision changed. You do not need to wait until you are 90 to start living. You do not need to wait until your health is perfect, or your energy is back, or your circumstances are more settled, or your fear has finally gone away. You need to start now, with exactly the life you have, in exactly the body you are in, with exactly the time that remains, because that time is enough. You are enough, and the life waiting for you on the other side of your fear is more beautiful than you can currently imagine. Now tell me in the comments, what is the one thing you have been postponing? What is your Grand Canyon? What would you do this week if fear was not a factor? Write it down. Make it real. And if someone else's comment moves you, reply to them. Tell them to go do it. Be the person who permits someone else to start. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that it is not too late. Because somewhere right now, someone is sitting on their porch waiting for a life that is already here. Subscribe to our weekly videos, because this is what we do here every single week. We remind each other that the best is not behind us. It is waiting for us to show up. Thank you for being here today. Now go make that call.